So most buyers are curious on what buyer expenses they will have when they go to buy a home, especially if you're a first-time home buyer. It's all a new experience. You don't know how much money maybe you should set aside and plan for. So this video is all about giving you an idea of what your upfront costs will be and also what your costs will be at closing. So you can plan on your upfront costs, earnest money. So when you make an offer on a property, you will be required to put down some earnest money. Now that earnest money is usually typically around 1%, but it's something that you get to decide how much you put down as a buyer. But keep in mind, sellers are not going to want to take their property off the market for $500 or maybe even $1,000. There's a lot of risk in a seller in taking their home off the market. So they want somebody they know is communicating their earnest desire to buy the property, and that is done through your earnest money. And it also provides a consideration to have a legal binding contract. And the second expense you need to plan for are home inspections. Now, there's just a typical straight up front home inspection. When an inspector will come in, they'll inspect the roof and, the main bones of the house. They won't get really deep in as far as electrical or the plumbing, but as far as, does the dishwasher work? Does the refrigerator work? Do the disposal work? So they get into those kinds of things. However, you need to keep in mind that especially if you buy an older home, like in the Sugar House area in the 1920s, 30s, 40s, 50s, you want to hire additional inspections. Like you want to be able to have the electrical changed, checked out thoroughly. You want to be able to have the plumbing checked out. I would personally have the plumbing checked from the house to the curb. I would have it scoped to make sure that there are no problems there and I'm not going to have a large expense after I close and having to replace that plumbing line. Also, the bones on the house may not be good, but you may walk in and aesthetically it looks great. It's decorated nice. It's got great floors, but you really need to have the bones of the home checked out, especially if it's older. You'll need things like possibly termite inspection. If we see any kind of hint that there could be a pest problem, that's additional expense you'll have to come up with to have that inspection, as well as radon. If you want to have your property checked for radon gas or for mold, those are all different inspections that are additional fee. Now, I want to talk to you a little bit about inspectors. Now, in the state of Utah, anybody could be an inspector. Just go print a card, buy a toolbox, and say, hey, I'm an inspector. I would not go that route. I would find a good realtor who's worked with legitimate inspectors, people who have been through an intensive program. There's one down in Colorado, people who work the business full time, and full-time realtors who do a lot of transactions. We know who the good people are and who are not. So you can also have an inspector that goes and prints out a 50-page report and scares the buyer to death. They may get way too into it and maybe take a picture of a scratch on a wall. And, when a buyer sees this big, long inspection report from the inspector, they're thinking, oh, there must be tons of things wrong with this home. I better not buy this home. It may not necessarily be true. It could just be the particular inspector. So, and also you need to plan on having a home appraisal done. Now, if you're buying a home with a loan, the lender will require you to have an appraisal done. So you will pay the appraiser directly. No, excuse me, you will pay the lender directly, and the lender will go ahead and pay the appraiser. As a realtor and as a home buyer, you cannot have direct contact with that specific appraiser. So you do not select that appraiser. And you can plan on about $500 for an appraisal right now. Some are more expensive. If you get into more square footage, the appraisals could be more money. And if you get into commercial properties, you could be in the thousands of dollars. So just know that you'll have an appraisal you'll need to pay for as well. Now, at closing, there are several different costs that you'll have to pay for. A lot of times it's just all lumped in and called closing costs, but your down payment will be included in that. So depending on your loan, there are some loans that require nothing down, like a VA loan. There are also other, like there's a new construction loan for a first-time home buyer. There are other zero down loans as well. So, but typically you should plan on around 3.5%. If you go conventionally, you want to put 20% down. it just all depends on how much you want to put down in the loan program that you have. So you'll need to plan on that, as well as your lender and title company fees. So the lender, nobody works for free. So a lender is going to charge you to do the loan. And a lot of times they charge by a percentage. It's just, that is between you and your lender, not your realtor. You and your lender work together to get your financing. The realtor is not involved with your personal finances per se, the lender, and you work that out. So you also work out the fees with them as well. In fact, in a future video, I'm going to be talking about how to shop for a good lender, and also, the differences between shopping for an interest rate versus APR, which is something that's really important to know. So closing costs also factor in the escrow officer. She has to do a lot of work. There's a lot of work behind the scenes, a lot of third parties that are talked to, a lot of research on the property. You'll be paying for a title policy for the lender that will be required. You will have like recording fees, doc fees, realtor fees, and then you'll have your prepaid insurance. So some insurance companies require a few months of homeowners insurance premium be collected at closing time. So you'll need to contact your insurance carrier for a quote once you have received your accepted offer. Now, just a note here that's really important to keep in mind is that when you go to what people refer to as closing, it's actually settlement. That's when you go in and you sign the paperwork. The closing takes place when, after all parties have signed and all of the wire transfers have taken place, all the loose ends are taken care of with the third parties, the title policies have been researched and purchased, and then there's the recording. Once the property is recorded on, then the property is yours, and then you could take possession based upon whatever the terms you've worked out with the seller in the original contract. So it is important to remember that you get that homeowner's insurance on the day that you sign the paperwork, not the day it closes. Because what would happen is some realtors don't inform their clients that you're putting yourself at great risk, especially if you're a seller and you go and you cancel your homeowner's insurance on the day that you sign the paperwork. The property's not closed on yet, but you've canceled your insurance. And what could happen is, for example, a situation is they closed on a Friday and Monday was a holiday. So the property wasn't going to officially close and record until Tuesday, but the buyer moved in over the weekend. So it wasn't officially the buyer's property. The seller still owned it. The seller canceled the home insurance, and the buyer had not signed up for their home insurance yet, and the house burned down. It was a horrible situation, so the seller was responsible for everything. And it was devastating. It really financially caused a lot of problems. But anyway, go ahead and subscribe, ring the bell. We're going to be talking about everything you need to know in detail about buying a home, selling a home. And also, I'm going to take you on tours throughout the different neighborhoods that I work, as well as other neighborhoods, other cities that you may be interested in if you're thinking about moving to Utah. I also have a guide that I put together just for folks who are considering a move to Utah. That it's a 40-page guide. I spent a lot of time putting it together, so it's packed full of information. So you'll need to comment guide in the comments in order to get a link to that. And also, if you are considering moving and you're from out of state, but you don't want to move to Utah, or you're moving to a part of Utah that I don't necessarily cover, say like Price or one of those, way up north, Cache County, I can refer you to a really good realtor. I'm connected with realtors throughout the entire country. Just go ahead and get a hold of me, and I will connect you with somebody who's reputable and somebody who's good, who'll take great care of you. So don't forget to subscribe, and let's see you on the next video.